Jake Sullivan wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the broken atmospheric processor, with the kind of look that could melt steel. It was the third one to fail this week, and he was running out of replacement parts. The machine wheezed and clicked like an old dog trying to breathe, and Jake knew it would probably die completely before he could get the spare components shipped from Earth. "Just my luck," he muttered, kicking the metal housing with his boot. The sound echoed through the maintenance bay of New Haven Colony, bouncing off the walls lined with broken equipment waiting for his attention. Jake was 42 years old, slightly overweight, and had been fixing things on this rock for the past 8 years. Before that, he had served in the Earth Defense Force as a combat engineer, but those days felt like a lifetime ago. Now he spent his time crawling through ventilation shafts, rewiring power grids, and keeping the life support systems running for 3,000 colonists who barely knew his name. The communication panel on the wall crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. "Jake, we need you in the main conference room now." The voice belonged to Governor Lisa Martinez, and she sounded worried, more worried than usual. Jake sighed and grabbed his toolbox. Whatever was broken now would have to wait. He walked through the corridors of the colony's main building, passing windows that showed the red dust and rocky landscape of New Haven. It was not a pretty planet, but it had minerals that Earth needed, and that was enough to justify putting people here. The conference room was packed when Jake arrived. Governor Martinez sat at the head of the table, her face pale and drawn. Around her were the other colony leaders, the mining supervisor, the agricultural coordinator, the medical chief, and a few others Jake recognized but did not know well. They all looked like someone had just told them the world was ending. "Jake, thank you for coming," Martinez said, gesturing to an empty chair. "We have a situation." Jake sat down and set his toolbox on the floor. "What kind of situation? More equipment failures?" Martinez shook her head. "Worse. Much worse." She pressed a button on the table, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a massive alien spacecraft, sleek and dangerous looking, with weapon ports that could probably turn New Haven into a crater. "3 hours ago, this ship entered our system," Martinez continued. "They sent us a message. The translation is still rough, but the meaning is clear enough." Another button press, and an alien voice filled the room. The words were strange and harsh, but the computer's translation appeared as text on the display. "We are the Velkari Empire. You are a new species in our territory. By ancient law, you must prove your worth through combat. Send your greatest warrior to face our champion. If you win, you will be welcomed as equals. If you lose, you will serve us as slaves." The room fell silent. Jake stared at the display, trying to process what he had just heard. "They want to fight us?" "One-on-one combat," Martinez confirmed. "Their champion against our champion. The entire fate of the colony depends on it." Jake looked around the room at the other colonists. They were miners, farmers, doctors, and administrators. None of them looked like warriors. "What kind of champion do they have?" Martinez pressed another button, and the display changed to show a massive alien creature. It stood at least 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like biological armor. Its arms were thick as tree trunks, and its face was a nightmare of teeth and glowing eyes. "His name is Thaxmore, the Undefeated," Martinez read from her notes. "According to their transmission, he has won over 200 single combats. He is genetically enhanced, trained from birth for warfare, and equipped with weapons that can cut through starship hulls." The silence stretched on. Jake could hear the ventilation system running overhead, one of the few things on this planet that was actually working properly at the moment. "So," Jake said finally, "what are our options?" "We can surrender without fighting," Martinez replied. "Become their slaves and hope they treat us well. Or we can try to run. But their ship is faster than anything we have. They would catch us before we could reach the next system. Or we can fight," added Dr. Kevin Price, the colony's medical officer. "But fight with what? We have some security guards, but they are trained to handle drunk miners, not alien super warriors." Jake drummed his fingers on the table. "What about calling Earth for help?" "I tried," Martinez said. "The nearest military ship is 3 weeks away. The Velkari gave us 48 hours to choose our champion. The room fell quiet again. Jake could see the fear in everyone's faces. These were good people who had come to New Haven to build something new, to make a life away from Earth's crowded cities and polluted skies. They did not deserve to become slaves to some alien empire. There has to be someone, Martinez said desperately. Anyone with military training, combat experience, anything. All eyes turned to Jake. He felt his stomach drop. Oh no, 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 no. I was a combat engineer. I built bridges and cleared minefields. I did not fight giant alien warriors. But you have training, Martinez pressed. You know weapons, tactics, strategy. I know how to blow things up and fix things that are broken, Jake protested. That is completely different. It is more than anyone else here has, Dr. Price pointed out. Jake looked around the room again. These people were counting on him, and he could see it in their eyes. The miners who worked 16-hour shifts to pull rare metals from the ground. The farmers who coaxed food from soil that barely wanted to grow anything. The doctors and teachers, and engineers who kept this little piece of humanity alive on a hostile world. He thought about his toolbox, sitting on the floor beside his chair. Inside it were the instruments of his trade, wrenches and welders, diagnostic tools and spare parts. Not exactly weapons of war, but they were what he knew best. All right, Jake said, surprised by the sound of his own voice. I will do it. The relief in the room was immediate and obvious. Martinez smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Thank you, Jake. I know this is asking a lot. Jake stood up and picked up his toolbox. It is asking everything, but someone has to do it. And I guess that someone is me. He paused at the door and looked back at the group. Just do me a favor, when this is over and assuming I am still alive, can we finally get those replacement parts for the atmospheric processors? They are driving me crazy. As he walked out of the conference room, Jake Sullivan did not feel like a hero. He felt like a tired maintenance worker who had just volunteered for the most dangerous repair job of his life. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what New Haven needed. The Velkari ship arrived at New Haven the next morning like a dark cloud blocking out the sun. Jake watched it through the observation deck windows as it settled into orbit, its hull gleaming with an oily black shine that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the colony's largest transport vessel. They are not trying to be subtle, muttered Katie Brooks, Jake's assistant. She was 26 years old, fresh out of engineering, school on Earth, and had been helping Jake keep the colony running for the past 2 years. Her hands shook slightly as she held her coffee cup, but her voice stayed steady. Jake nodded, still staring up at the alien vessel. Probably the point. Make us scared before the fight even starts. The communication system crackled to life throughout the colony. Governor Martinez's voice echoed through every building and corridor. Attention all colonists. The Velkari have sent a shuttle to the surface. They will be landing at the main spaceport in 1 hour to inspect the combat arena and meet our champion. Please remain in your quarters until further notice. Jake finished his coffee and set the cup down. Guess that is my cue. Katie looked at him with worried eyes. Are you sure about this, Jake? Maybe there is still time to find someone else. Like who? Jake asked, checking his toolbox one more time. The security chief pulled his back moving. Cargo yesterday. The mining supervisor is 63 years old and needs glasses to see his own feet. Face it, Katie, I am the best we have got, which is not saying much. The spaceport was normally a quiet place used mostly for supply runs and the occasional passenger transport. Today it buzzed with nervous activity as colonists prepared for the alien visitors. Jake arrived to find a makeshift arena marked out with energy barriers and monitoring equipment. It looked more like a construction site than a battlefield. Governor Martinez met him at the entrance, flanked by the colony's small security team. The Velkari shuttle will be here any minute. Are you ready? Jake hefted his toolbox and shrugged. As ready as I will ever be. What do we know about their combat rules? Not much, Martinez admitted. The translation software is still working on the fine details, but it seems like a standard dual format. One-on-one, no outside interference, Fight until one side surrenders or cannot continue. A rumble filled the air as the alien shuttle descended from the mother ship. It was sleek and predatory looking, shaped like a spear point with wings. The craft landed with barely a whisper, its advanced engines making the colony's own shuttles look like antiques. The shuttle door opened with a hiss of escaping air. The first alien to step out was clearly an officer of some kind, wearing elaborate robes and carrying what looked like a ceremonial staff. Behind him came two guards, their armor gleaming and weapons visible, and behind them came the champion. Thaxmore the Undefeated was even more terrifying in person than he had looked in the holographic display. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his body covered in bioarmor that seemed to shift and move like living tissue. His arms were massive, ending in hands that could probably crush a human skull without effort. His face was hidden behind a helmet that looked like the skull of some prehistoric predator, with glowing red eyes that swept across the assembled humans like searchlights. The officer alien spoke in their harsh language, and the translation device provided a mechanical voiceover. I am War Commander Velktar of the 17th Battle Fleet. I come to witness the trial of combat between species, as commanded by ancient law. Governor Martinez stepped forward, trying to look more confident than she felt. Welcome to New Haven Colony. I am Governor Lisa Martinez. This is our champion, Jake Sullivan. Jake felt every alien eye turned toward him. He was still wearing his work coveralls, still carrying his toolbox, still looking exactly like what he was, a maintenance worker who had not slept well the night before. Next to the massive alien warrior, he looked like a child trying to play with adults. Thaxmore spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding metal even through the translator. This is your champion? This small, soft creature? That is right, Jake said, stepping forward. Jake Sullivan, Senior Maintenance Technician. Nice to meet you. The alien guards made sounds that might have been laughter. Thaxmore tilted his massive head, studying Jake like a scientist examining an interesting bug. You are either very brave or very foolish, small human. Probably both, Jake replied. But I am what you get. War Commander Velktar raised his staff, and the other aliens fell silent. The arena has been prepared according to Velkari standards. Variable gravity, energy barriers, environmental hazards. Combat will begin at sunset. Until then, both champions may inspect the battlefield and prepare as they see fit. The aliens moved away to examine the arena setup, speaking among themselves, in their harsh language. Jake could see them pointing at various pieces of equipment, nodding with approval at the energy barriers and weapon detectors. Katie appeared at Jake's elbow, carrying a large bag. I brought some things I thought you might need. Jake looked inside the bag and raised an eyebrow. Along with his usual repair tools, Katie had packed electromagnetic pulse devices, signal jammers, portable power cells, and several items he did not immediately recognize. Where did you get all this? The mining equipment storage, the geological survey kit, the communications repair shop. Katie lowered her voice. I may have bent a few rules about requisitioning supplies. Jake grinned for the first time all day. Katie, you are a genius. They spent the next few hours walking around the arena, with Jake taking careful notes about everything he saw, the energy barriers, the gravity control systems, the environmental hazard generators. All of it was Velkari technology, but technology followed certain universal principles. Everything had power sources, control circuits, and failure points. Meanwhile, Thaxmore practiced with his weapons, moving through combat forms that were poetry written in violence. His bioarmor rippled with each movement, adapting to provide maximum protection and mobility. The alien warrior was a perfect fusion of biology and technology, designed for one purpose only. As the sun began to set over New Haven's rocky landscape, the colonists gathered around the arena. They stayed well back from the energy barriers, but Jake could see their faces in the growing twilight. Fear, hope, and desperate faith all mixed together. Governor Martinez approached Jake one last time. Any final requests? Jake closed his toolbox and picked it up. Yeah. When I win this thing, I want a vacation, somewhere with beaches and drinks that come with little umbrellas. When you win? Martinez asked. Jake looked across the arena at Thaxmore, who was performing some kind of pre-battle ritual that involved a lot of roaring and weapon flourishing. That is right. When I win. Because I did not volunteer to die today, Governor. I volunteered to solve a problem. And I have never met a problem I could not fix. The alien war commander raised his staff and the arena hummed to life around them. The arena activated with a deep hum that Jake felt in his bones. Energy barriers shimmered to life around the combat zone, creating a circular battlefield about 50 meters across. Gravity fluctuated in different sections, making some areas feel normal while others would crush a person or send them floating toward the ceiling. Environmental hazards dotted the landscape: steam vents, electrical discharge points, and spinning blade mechanisms that would activate randomly during the fight. Jake stood at one end of the arena, his toolbox at his feet and his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Across from him, Thaxmore towered like a monument to warfare, his bioarmor gleaming under the arena lights. The alien champion held two weapons: a curved blade that hummed with energy and a projectile launcher that looked capable of punching holes through starship hulls. War Commander Velktar raised his ceremonial staff high above his head. By the ancient laws of the Velkari Empire, let combat begin. Fight with honor, and may the worthy claim victory. The staff came down, and Thaxmore moved. The alien champion covered the distance between them in 3 massive strides, his energy, blade cutting through the air where Jake's head had been a split second before. Jake rolled to the side, coming up with a small device in his hand. He pressed a button and tossed it toward a cluster of arena control panels. "You run like prey," Thaxmore growled, his translated voice echoing through the arena. "Face me properly, small human." Jake did not reply. He was too busy studying the arena's response to his first gadget. The device had been one of Katie's electromagnetic pulse generators designed to disrupt electronic systems. It worked perfectly. Several of the environmental hazards flickered and went offline, while one of the gravity control nodes began cycling through random settings. Thaxmore charged again, this time firing his projectile weapon. Jake dove behind, a barrier as explosive rounds shattered the ground where he had been standing. The aliens' weapons were devastating, but they followed predictable patterns. Military training, even alien military training, emphasized efficiency and proven tactics. "Stand and fight!" Thaxmore roared, smashing through a low barrier with his armored fist. "You dishonor both our species with this cowardice." Jake popped up from behind a different barrier, 30 meters away. "I am not running," he called back. "I am working." The second device he threw was a signal jammer, one of the tools used to isolate malfunctioning communication equipment. It landed near the arena's central control hub and immediately began interfering with the wireless signals that coordinated the battlefield systems. Several of the energy barriers flickered and one of the gravity fields inverted itself. Thaxmore stumbled as the gravity shift caught him off guard. His bioarmor adapted quickly, but for a moment he looked uncertain. Jake used that moment to move again, staying low and keeping obstacles between himself and the alien champion. The crowd of colonists watched in tense silence. Jake could see their faces pressed against the observation windows, fear and hope warring in their expressions. Governor Martinez stood at the front, her hands clenched into fists as she watched her colony's fate play out in the arena below. "Clever," Thaxmore admitted, regaining his balance. "But cleverness will not save you when I catch you." The alien champion changed tactics, using his projectile launcher to systematically destroy Jake's cover. Barriers exploded into fragments, environmental hazards sparked and died, and the arena floor became a maze of craters and debris. But with each shot, Jake learned more about his opponent's weapons and movement patterns. Jake's third device was a portable power cell, modified with some creative rewiring that Katie had suggested. When he activated it and connected it to one of the arena's power distribution nodes, the entire electrical system went haywire. Lights strobed, gravity fields fluctuated wildly, and several of the environmental hazards began operating in reverse. Thaxmore was thrown off balance again as the gravity beneath his feet suddenly tripled in intensity. The alien champion was strong enough to move even under the crushing weight, but his movements became slower and more deliberate. Jake used the opportunity to implement the next phase of his plan. You fight like a mechanic. Thaxmore snarled, struggling against the heavy gravity. No honor, no courage, just tricks and gadgets. That is because I am a mechanic, Jake replied, activating another device. This one was a sonic disruptor, normally used to break up mineral deposits in mining operations. The high-frequency sound, waves it generated would not hurt Thaxmore directly, but they interfered with the neural connections between the alien and his bioarmor. For the first time since the fight began, Thaxmore looked genuinely concerned. His armor flickered and stuttered, its adaptive responses becoming sluggish and unpredictable. The alien champion's advantage in protection was beginning to slip away. Jake kept moving, using the arena's chaos to his advantage. Every piece of equipment he deployed served multiple purposes. The electromagnetic pulse devices disrupted systems while also creating electrical interference that masked his movements. The signal jammers not only confused the arena controls, but also made it harder for Thaxmore's bioarmor to coordinate its responses. Impossible, War Commander Velktar muttered from the sidelines, watching his champion struggle against an opponent who should have been dead within the first 30 seconds of combat. How does this human understand our technology? The answer was simple, though the aliens did not realize it yet. Jake did not understand their technology specifically, but he understood the principles that all technology followed. Power flowed through circuits, signals traveled through networks, and every system had points of failure. It did not matter if the equipment was human, alien, or built by sentient robots from another dimension, the fundamentals remained the same. Thaxmore fired his projectile launcher again, but the weapon misfired due to the electronic interference. The alien champion roared in frustration and charged forward with his energy blade, intent on finishing the fight through pure physical force. Jake had been waiting for this moment. He activated his final device, a gravitational field manipulator that Katie had cobbled together from mining equipment and navigation sensors. The device created a localized gravity well that pulled Thaxmore off course, sending the alien champion stumbling into one of the arena's few remaining active hazards. Steam erupted around Thaxmore as the thermal vent activated, filling the air with superheated vapor. The alien's bioarmor protected him from the worst of it, but the steam blocked his vision and confused his sensors. Jake used the distraction to move into position for his next move. The colonists pressed closer to the observation windows, hardly daring to breathe. Their maintenance worker, their ordinary technician, was not just surviving against an alien super warrior. He was winning. Slowly, methodically, and with the patience of someone who had spent years fixing broken machinery, Jake Sullivan was taking apart the most dangerous opponent the Velkari Empire could send. Thaxmore emerged from the steam cloud, his bioarmor, scorched but still functional. The alien champion's red eyes swept the arena, searching for his elusive opponent. When he finally spotted Jake, standing calmly beside the arena's main control panel, Thaxmore's expression shifted from anger to something that might have been respect. "You are not what you appear to be," the alien said, his voice carrying a note of grudging admiration. Jake smiled and placed his hand on the control panel. "I am exactly what I appear to be. I am a guy who fixes things. And right now, the thing that needs fixing is this fight." He pressed the button he had been preparing for the entire battle, and the arena's systems responded to his careful modifications in exactly the way he had planned. Jake pressed the button, and the arena transformed around them. Every modification he had made during the fight activated at once. The gravity fields that he had been subtly adjusting throughout the battle suddenly reversed and multiplied, creating pockets of crushing weight next to areas of zero gravity. The electrical systems he had overloaded began feeding power back into the environmental controls, turning the scattered hazards into a coordinated network of obstacles. The signal jammers he had placed created interference patterns that turned Thaxmore's own bioarmor against him. The alien champion staggered as conflicting forces pulled at his massive frame. His bioarmor, designed to adapt to any threat, could not process the contradictory signals it was receiving. In some places it hardened against crushing gravity, while in others it tried to compensate for weightlessness. The result was that Thaxmore found himself fighting his own equipment as much as his human opponent. "What have you done?" War Commander Velktar demanded from outside the arena, his ceremonial staff forgotten as he stared at the chaos unfolding before him. Jake did not answer. The alien officer? He was too busy implementing the second phase of his plan. While Thaxmore struggled with the malfunctioning arena, Jake moved to a position he had carefully calculated during his earlier reconnaissance. It was a spot where 3 different gravity fields intersected, creating a stable pocket in the middle of the chaos. Thaxmore roared in frustration and fired his energy blade at one of the gravity generators, trying to restore some order to the battlefield. The weapon's beam struck the device and overloaded it, but instead of fixing the problem, it made things worse. The destroyed generator sent feedback through the arena's power grid, causing more systems to malfunction in cascade failures that spread throughout the facility. "You are destroying the arena," Thaxmore accused, his translated voice distorted by the electromagnetic interference. "This is not honorable combat." "This is problem-solving," Jake replied, pulling another device from his toolbox. This one was a simple electromagnet, the kind used to retrieve metal tools from hard-to-reach places. But Katie had modified it with additional power cells and focusing coils, turning it into something much more powerful. Jake activated the electromagnet and aimed it at Thaxmore's bio-armor. The alien champion's protective shell contained enough metallic components to be affected by the magnetic field. Suddenly, Thaxmore found himself being pulled inexorably toward one of the arena's steel support pillars. The alien champion fought against the magnetic attraction, his massive muscles straining against forces he could not see or touch. His bio-armor tried to compensate by hardening certain sections and softening others, but the magnetic field affected the armor's internal structure in ways its designers had never anticipated. "Impossible," Thaxmore growled, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "No primitive species should understand magnetic field manipulation." Jake moved closer, staying within the stable gravity pocket he had identified. "We are not primitive, we are just different." He activated his next tool, a harmonic resonator that Katie had built from sonic mining equipment. The device generated specific frequencies that interfered with the molecular bonds in Thaxmore's bio-armor. The alien champion's protective shell began to vibrate, its adaptive capabilities overwhelmed by the conflicting signals it was receiving from multiple sources. Thaxmore's projectile launcher sparked and died as its internal circuits overloaded. His energy blade flickered uncertainly, its power fluctuating with each pulse from Jake's devices. For the first time in over 200 battles, the undefeated champion found himself effectively disarmed. The crowd of colonists watching from the observation deck could hardly believe what they were seeing. Their maintenance technician had turned the arena itself into a weapon, using the Velkari's own advanced technology against their greatest warrior. Governor Martinez pressed her face to the window, watching with amazement as Jake continued to systematically neutralize every advantage his opponent possessed. "This is not possible," War Commander Velktar repeated, but his voice carried less conviction than before. Around him, other Velkari officers muttered among themselves in their harsh language, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. Jake pulled out his final surprise, a device that looked like nothing more than a modified circuit tester. Reality, it was a neural disruptor that Katie had designed based on readings they had taken of Thaxmore's bio-armor during the aliens' arrival. The device generated electromagnetic pulses specifically tuned to interfere with the connection between the alien champion and his living armor. When Jake activated the neural disruptor, Thaxmore stumbled as if he had been struck by lightning. The bio-armor that had been part of him for decades suddenly felt foreign and unresponsive. The symbiotic relationship between warrior and equipment that made Velkari champion so deadly was severed in an instant. "How?" Thaxmore demanded, his voice now carrying genuine fear. "How do you know our technology? How do you understand what should be impossible for your species to comprehend?" Jake set down the neural disruptor and picked up a simple wrench from his toolbox. It was an old tool, scratched and worn from years of use, but it represented everything that made humans different from the Velkari. "We do not just use technology," Jake explained, walking slowly toward the increasingly desperate alien champion. "We understand it. We take it apart, figure out how it works, and then we make it better. Every human child grows up fixing things, building things, improving things. It is what we do. Thaxamore tried to charge forward, but without his bio-armor's assistance he moved slowly and clumsily. The gravity fields that Jake had manipulated caught him again, and the alien champion found himself pinned against the arena floor by forces that should have been helping him. "Your armor is impressive," Jake continued, still approaching with his wrench in hand. "But it is still just a machine, and I have never met a machine I could not fix, modify, or disable." Jake knelt beside the trapped alien warrior and began examining the bio-armor's control interfaces. To Thaxamore's horror, the human technician started disconnecting power couplings and rerouting control circuits with the same casual competence he would show when repairing a broken water recycler. "You cannot do this," Thaxamore protested weakly. "The armor is part of me. It has been integrated with my biology since childhood." "I know," Jake said, continuing his work with steady hands. "That is why I am being careful. I am not trying to hurt you. I am just turning off your weapons and mobility systems while leaving your life support intact." Within minutes, Jake had effectively lobotomized the bio-armor. Thaxamore lay helpless on the arena floor, alive and uninjured but completely unable to continue fighting. The greatest warrior of the Velkari Empire had been defeated not by superior force but by superior understanding. Jake stood up and dusted off his hands. He looked around the ruined arena, noting which systems would need repair and which could be salvaged. Even in the moment of his greatest victory, his mind was already planning the cleanup work that would be required. "I surrender," Thaxamore said, quietly, his voice barely audible over the arena's malfunctioning systems. "The human has proven his worth. By ancient law, I acknowledge defeat." The energy barriers around the arena flickered and died. War Commander Velktar stood frozen in apparent shock, his ceremonial staff hanging forgotten at his side. Around him, the other Velkari officers stared at the scene before them as if witnessing something that challenged their fundamental understanding of the universe. Jake picked up his toolbox and walked toward the arena exit, where Governor Martinez and the other colonists waited with expressions of disbelief and growing joy. Behind him, Thaxamore remained motionless on the arena floor, defeated by an opponent who had treated the fight like just another repair job that needed to be done properly. The silence in the spaceport stretched on for what felt like hours. Jake walked out of the ruined arena, his toolbox in one hand and his wrench still in the other, looking exactly like what he had always been, a tired maintenance worker who had just finished another difficult job. Behind him, the arena's broken systems sparked and hummed with the electronic equivalent of death rattles. Governor Martinez was the first to break the spell. She ran forward and grabbed Jake in a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You actually did it." The other colonists erupted in cheers and applause, but Jake barely heard them. He was looking past Martinez at the group of Velkari officers who stood frozen near their shuttle. War Commander Velktar held his ceremonial staff with hands that trembled slightly, his alien features unreadable but his body language suggesting deep shock. "What happens now?" Jake asked Martinez quietly. Before she could answer, a new sound filled the air. It was the rumble of approaching ships, but these were human vessels, not Velkari. Jake looked up to see 3 Earth Defense Force cruisers dropping out of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with military precision and their weapon ports clearly visible. The lead ship's communication system crackled to life, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Ryan Clark of the Earth Defense Force. We are responding to a diplomatic emergency. All parties are to stand down immediately and prepare for negotiations." Jake stared at the ships in confusion. "I thought the nearest military vessels were 3 weeks away." Martinez smiled through her tears. "They were. These ships have been hiding in the outer system for the past 2 days, waiting to see how the challenge played out." Waiting? Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. "You mean they could have intervened at any time?" "Jake Sullivan, you magnificent bastard," came a familiar voice from the shuttle that was now landing near the spaceport. "I should have known you would figure out a way to win without firing a single shot." Jake turned to see Admiral Ryan Clark, stepping out of the shuttle, grinning like a man who had just won a very large bet. Clark was Jake's former commanding officer from his Earth Defense Force days, a man who understood both warfare and engineering well enough to appreciate what had just happened. "Admiral," Jake said slowly, "what exactly is going on here?" Clark walked over and shook Jake's hand firmly. "What is going on is that Earth received the Valkyrie challenge 3 days ago. We could have sent a fleet to drive them off, or we could have sent our best military champions to fight their warrior. Instead, we chose to send someone who would demonstrate what makes humanity truly special." Jake felt the knot in his stomach tighten. "You mean you planned this whole thing?" "Not planned exactly," Clark replied. "But when we learned about the challenge, I remembered a certain combat engineer who had an unusual talent for solving impossible problems with whatever tools happened to be available. I suggested to the Colonial Administration that they let you handle this your way." War Commander Velktar finally found his voice. "You knew," he said, his translated words carrying accusation and amazement in equal measure. "You knew this human could defeat our greatest warrior." Clark shrugged. "I knew Jake Sullivan could fix any problem if you gave him enough time and the right tools. I also knew that your people would underestimate him because he does not look like a warrior by your standards." The Valkyrie commander looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. "We have studied your species for months preparing for this encounter. We analyzed your military capabilities, your weapons technology, your combat doctrines. But we never considered that your greatest strength might be your engineers." "That is the point," Clark said. "Every human is an engineer to some degree. We take things apart to understand them. We build new things from old parts, and we solve problems that other species would consider impossible. Jake here just did what any human would do when confronted with a complex system that needed fixing." Jake looked around at the faces surrounding him, the relieved colonists, the respectful aliens, the grinning admiral. "So this was all a test? To prove something about humanity?" "Not a test," Clark corrected. "A demonstration. The Valkyrie Empire has been expanding across this part of the galaxy for centuries, conquering species that could not prove their worth in single combat. They respect strength, but they had never encountered a species that defined strength the way we do." Thaxmore spoke from where he lay on the arena floor, his bio-armor still disabled but his voice carrying clearly. "In 200 battles, I have faced the greatest warriors of dozens of worlds. I have defeated champions who could crush mountains with their bare hands, who could move faster than light itself, who could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. But I have never faced an opponent who defeated me by understanding me better than I understood myself." War Commander Velktar approached Jake, moving with the careful dignity of someone who had just had his entire worldview challenged. "Human, Jake Sullivan, you have proven that your species possesses a form of strength we had not recognized. The Valkyrie Empire offers humanity a treaty of equals, with full rights and protections under our ancient laws." Jake set down his toolbox and looked at the alien commander. "That is very generous, but I have a question. Speak. What happens to all the other species you conquered, the ones who lost their champions in single combat?" Velktar's alien features shifted in what might have been surprise. "They serve the Empire as is proper, having proven themselves unworthy of equality." Jake shook his head. "That does not work for us. If humanity is going to be part of your empire, then we want to review the cases of every species you have conquered. Maybe they were not unworthy. Maybe you just did not understand what made them strong." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the broken arena continued to spark and hum, a testament to the power of human ingenuity when applied to seemingly impossible problems. "This is unprecedented," Velktar said finally. "But if this is the price of gaining humanity as allies rather than conquering you as subjects, then we will consider it." Admiral Clark clapped Jake on the shoulder. "That is why we sent you instead of a fleet, Jake. Military force might have driven them away, but it would not have changed how they think about strength and worth." Jake picked up his toolbox again and looked around at the damaged arena. "Well, if we are going to be reviewing alien civilizations and changing galactic politics, can we do it somewhere else? I have got atmospheric processors that are still broken, And frankly, I am tired of being responsible for more than one crisis at a time. The laughter that followed was heard by human and Velkari alike, marking the beginning of a new chapter in galactic relations. As the various ships prepared to depart for formal negotiations, Jake Sullivan walked back toward the colony's maintenance bay, already planning the repairs that would be needed to fix the arena's systems. Behind him, Thaxmore the Undefeated watched, his conqueror disappear into the distance, carrying a simple toolbox and the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the galaxy was the ability to understand how things worked and make them work better. 3 days later, Jake finally got his replacement parts for the atmospheric processors, and 6 months after that, when the Velkari Empire began releasing previously conquered species for reassessment, Jake Sullivan became known throughout the galaxy not as a great warrior, but as the maintenance technician who had fixed an entire empire's understanding of what strength really meant. He still complained about broken equipment, but now he did it as humanity's unofficial ambassador to a dozen different alien civilizations. Some problems, he discovered, were worth fixing on a galactic scale.